Hello, my name is Gary, and today it's going to be another programming stream where I'll uh, explain things about programming using JavaScript, and um, you can ask questions. Today's going to be the last uh, JavaScript or pure JavaScript stream, most likely. Why? Because I've basically taught everything you need to know from JavaScript that can be transferred over to um, any other programming languages. So that's why I'm going to end the JavaScript portion for now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week, but um, might be that next week is either going to be TypeScript, so that we are going to get uh, type hinting, or I don't know, maybe I'll use that time to work on a project, a small project, not something I'll actually release. Well, I'm going to release it. Um, I actually have made a GitHub repository, public GitHub repository for everything I make on stream. And these stream projects are also going to be made available for free, no strings attached, MIT licensed. Um, and you can basically use them to get to know a bit about JavaScript programming and all that kind of stuff. So let's get on with the IDE. So we're back at Visual Studio Code. Last time we discussed objects and classes and the this keyword, and we've made a start with a small card game. It's not exactly a true card game. There's nothing visible here, only in the console, but we might be able to turn this into something more visible. But let's first start with um, asynchronous um, asynchronous functions and programming. So what is async or asynchronous programming functions? Okay. So let's first remove this. Oh crap! I've modified the wrong thing. So let's go back here. Um, did I didn't accidentally say. So let's go on with this. Let's copy this bit, paste it, and remove this portion. Async. Let's remove this as well. So asynchronous functions are functions that basically run asynchronous. Um, First and foremost, JavaScript by default isn't threaded. In fact, it just isn't threaded. Um, don't ask me why. Um, well, you can ask me why, but I'm not really going to be able to explain why. It probably has something to do with the fact that JavaScript needs to be unified over all kinds of computers and browsers, and not every computer has multiple cores. So yeah, multi-threading is really hard to implement. Um, it doesn't mean that if you have a single core you can't multi-thread, I believe, but I'll need to look into the how and why. But anyway, what uses are asynchronous functions? Well, asynchronous functions um, are helpful, especially when doing data processing, like fetching data from a server. So let's try to write something to make it a bit more clear. A simple asynchronous function is basically loading in an image. So let's try to look for a good image. Luckily, I do have a few images. So let's take this music note. Wait, open. Let's do this. Let's paste it here. Yeah. So I have this music note image. It's the same image I use for the Songify widget in the bottom left. And let's try to load it in. Now, well, the main issue is because I run it locally, it loads as quickly as possible. So yeah, that's going to be a small issue to try and demonstrate how asynchronous functions work, but let's just do it. So let's first create an image. Const image is new image. And the image source is music node.png. Let's do console log image dot width. Oh, that's strange. This image doesn't seem to have a width. Well, that's because the image first needs to be loaded in, and images are loaded in an asynchronous way. The image object is already created. The image is being loaded, but it hasn't been loaded yet. Let's see, what can we do? If we do image dot on load is a function, then we can do console log image, no, wait, image loaded. So if I do console log here, console log loading image, and you can see that loading image, even though loading image is after this function, it's still being executed first. That means that the image still hasn't loaded yet. So if we now do, during the unload do image width, we get a width of 1000 pixels. This is a good example of an asynchronous function. Or well, it isn't exactly an asynchronous function, but it's an asynchronous action. It first queues the image, then tries to load the image, and if the image is loaded, it performs this action. Now, so this is pretty interesting, but we want to do a bit more with it. So okay, originally I wasn't planning on doing things like canvas and such, but I think canvas is pretty handy in this case. So let's do canvas HTML. Let's copy this, paste it in, and let's create a canvas element, call it canvas. Next we do const canvas is document query selector canvas. So if I'm correct, I used to do uh, get element by ID, and I already did explain that query selector is also a valid possibility to use. So this is also valid. This also gets this canvas element. So first, let's get a way to draw on the canvas. So let's do context. And most people shorten it to CTX, and that's also valid as long as you know what this variable means. Um, Canvas is get context 2D. So the reason I'm using the full context name is mostly to be consistent in the future. I don't like to shorten my variables too much, but you are allowed to shorten your variables. So let's first do, I believe, context fill style on me, I think, or okay. Okay, I haven't worked with Canvas for that much lately, but I can still look at it. Okay, wait, why do I get this? Okay, so let's go. And this is also a thing. Like I said, programmers don't actually learn things from the top of their head, remember things from the top of their head. Because the thing is, there are so many features and functions in each and every programming language. I personally, at work, use I need to say this. I use JavaScript and PHP, and knowing each and every function is crazy. It's not doable. So it's okay to just look at the documentation of JavaScript or PHP or whatever language you're using, because trying to remember each and every function, that's not something anybody would do. And you will forget what certain functions do. So let's, if we do now do fill rec 0, 0, 100, 100, and then apparently nothing happens. So what is the reason? So we have the canvas element. First, let's do a console log canvas. Let's see if that does anything. All right, it apparently didn't show the preview, so okay, yeah, it still works. So now we have a blue square. Now let's change this to CCC. I like this color because it's a light gray, but it still shows you the how and what. So what we're now going to do is canvas width and canvas height, and 2000. Okay, plus, yeah. Okay, why didn't, maybe I made a small typo. It's also possible. Um, so now we have a rectangle and a canvas with a certain width and height. It doesn't really look great because it's small, but that's okay. we don't need to have a big canvas to do this small demonstration. But what I do want to do is give it a fixed width and height. So let's go width is 220, canvas height is 240. Okay, so what I want to do now is draw an image here. So how do we do it? Let's see. There is something called draw image, or something where you can draw an image with. So let's try it. We already have the image file. So what we now need to do is context draw image comma 0, 0. Okay, but nothing is happening. Well, what if we place it in the unload? And yeah, it's drawing. So obviously it goes beyond the what the canvas size is. So what we can do is we can make it a bit smaller. Um, so let's see. We want the width to be 240 and height 240. So now it fits inside the canvas, and we can do a positioning like 320 minus 240 divided by 2, and then now it's centered. Or instead of this, we can do canvas width, and then yeah, like this. And now it's perfectly centered. But as you can see, we now have everything in the image unload function, right? That can be a bit messy. So before we return here, we are going to do something else. Let's do a new file and first work on promises. So show in preview so that we get this and call this promises. Remove everything here. So what are promises? Well, promises are special kinds of objects that can be resolved or rejected. So what are promises exactly? A promise basically executes a function, and at the end it determines whether or not the function succeeded or failed. So let's just make a promises. So const promise is new promise, and a promise is a promise object. So what we now can do is create a function. Right now I'm going to use an arrow function, and I'm going to add resolve and reject. Remember, you can do this with a regular function. You're free to use whatever you want to pick, a regular function or an arrow function. Both will work. Now let's go on and do resolve. So let's now do console log promise. Okay, so now we have a promise object. And okay, right now it says that it's fulfilled, which is true because we immediately resolved it. But it really doesn't do much. Well, okay, let's try something else. So we have resolve and we have reject. What does this do? Wait, we've got an uncaught rejection, and we can also see that it has been rejected. So um, there is a difference between resolve and reject. So let's try to do it, use it in a certain uh, um, context. So let's see. Let's use window dot confirm, and then yes, okay, or cancel. Okay, that obviously can't doesn't work. That's okay. So what we can do is set timeout and use this resolve, move this and do 1 second. And let's now do console log promise. Okay, so right now it says pending, but after a second nothing happens. Let's just do it console log and do done. And we can see it's done, but it still doesn't really do anything. And we don't want anything within this promise to say it's done. We want to do it outside the promise. So let's try to find out what we can do. Well, there is a method for promise, um, and this method for promises is then. There are three important methods. It's then. Um, let's do this. Then catch, and finally. So what do these three do? Well, first let's try something out. So let's keep it at this and do this. Let's do console log done. And as you can see, uh, this promise finishes after 1 second, and after 1 second it says done. So let's add a extra zero. So after 10 seconds it will be done. 2, 3, 4, 7, and around now it should be done, and it's done. So after 10 seconds, if it says that this is done. So what does catch do? Now, well, let's try something else. Let's do a button. Um, ID is button, and the type is also button, and cancel timeout. So let's also set timeout executes a function after a certain period, and the period is in milliseconds. In this case, it executes this function after 10 seconds. So let's now do const um, timeout is. So why do we use this? Um, we hmm. Okay, I need to think what I want to do. Maybe I want to do left timeout. Then timeout is set timeout. So afterwards, I'm going to do document query selector button, add event listener, click, and a function. So what I want to do now is, after I click this button, something needs to happen. So if I do console log x and I click here, it says x. So yeah. No, that's not really going to work. Let's do const timeout. Let's delete it. And let's move this code inside this part. Yeah, this is way better. So what we can do now is was it remove timeout, clear timeout, timeout, and reject. So what I want to do is remove button. Let's also add a function to remove the button, just in case. So no, let's not do this here. So as you can see, it keeps on going and going and going until it's finally done. Now let's refresh this page and click on cancel timeout. Oh, there's an uncaught something uncaught. And what does this exactly mean? It means that there is a rejection, but rejection isn't being handled. So the rejection needs to be handled by a catch method. Let's do that, and let's do console log rejected. So let's save and click on cancel, and we get the message rejected. Okay, so but what if we click on this again? Well, it doesn't do anything. So this button is useless. What can we do? After either the timeout is done or we cancel the timeout, we want to remove this button. So after 10 seconds, it needs to be canceled. So what we can do is we can make a function that removes this button and then add it to both here and here. But instead, we can also use finally, because, okay, first let's do this. Let's do, oh yeah, right, this is what I forgot to do. Control X button. Const button is this, and do button parent node, and remove child button. This is one of the quirks of JavaScript DOM manipulation. You can't directly remove an element. You need to take its parent element and then have the parent element remove the element you want to remove. So that's a small quirk, but that's not such a big deal. So now let's refresh, and as you can see, after 10 seconds, this button will disappear. So, but what happens if we click the cancel button? It also disappears. So, what does a promise do? A promise allows you to execute something asynchronously without well, wait, what did I want to say? So a promise object has two results. It is either resolved or rejected, and this can be done asynchronously. So that means that you can do perform other actions while the promise is running. For example, I can change the content of this button, or let's do const ticker is document query selector ticker, and let's add a ticker element. If ID is ticker, and have a const interval. This is another cool function. Okay, so first I'm going to use this set interval. Set interval is actually the same as set timeout, except it executes it every X amount of milliseconds. So if I do every 100 milliseconds, then I can do and do let value 0, value plus plus, and then ticker text content is value. And every 100 milliseconds, it adds 1 to the value. And you can cancel this timeout. So let's do this here. So let's do clear interval, and then after the timer runs out, which is about 10 seconds, it should end at 100, value 100, but yeah. So now it stops increasing. And yeah, that's how you can asynchronously run something with a predetermined result, either resolve or reject. Okay, so we've done set interval. There's also another way which is a bit more complicated. So let's do that running through. Let's do const interval is a function in this case. Then do value. Why did I remove everything? Let's just remove this, and then change this into running false, and then if running request animation frame. So what this does is it waits until the next time it can render before it runs this function. So let's now first only disadvantage is you need to do an initial run of this function. So let's do it at the end, and you can see that it keeps increasing, and we can see how many frames it takes before the timeout times out. So after 848 ticks, it ends the promise, and it is resolved. And if we do cancel timeout, it does the same. So what can we do with a promise? Well, a lot. We can let's go back to this example. Or no, let's copy this example and call it image canvas promise. HTML. Let's paste this and let's show and preview. So we have this image. So what we can do now is const image loading is new promise, resolve, and reject. In this case, we can leave reject out because we're not going to use it. But in most cases, you might need the reject. It depends on whether you want to have a failsafe for when data isn't processed the way you want it to or not. And yeah, it's always necessary to add a reject. Not always. That's what. So yeah. So what are we going to do? We are going to move this and this inside here. Or well, should we do this? No, because we might want to process the image. So let's do this. And remove the console log and this part. So image loading we can call just image promise and remove this. So once the image is loaded, and what we also can do instead of onload, if you're not comfortable with onload, you can also use add event listener and then load event listener. But this also works. So what are we going to do? We're going to resolve, and then okay. So this doesn't work, but what does work is let's place it here. Let's place this more on top, and let's go on with this. Let's book it in. Redraw is a new function, and remove this part. So next, request animation frame redraw, or let's just call it draw. So yeah, now we can see that this image is being drawn. But this isn't exactly ideal. We only want so now we're drawing this image regardless of whether it's loaded or not. It's not really cool. So what we can do is image promise them, and now it only draws whenever it is loaded. So okay, this isn't exactly a good use case, but let's do something else that's pretty cool. So we have the promise running here. So every time this draw is run, it checks if the promise is resolved. It doesn't matter if you've already checked it or not. Every time you run it, it will execute this. It's not exactly efficient this way, but it can be done like this. So what does this mean? You can also do image promise then And then let's do canvas width is image width, canvas height is image height. So now the canvas is 100 by 100. So that's actually pretty neat. So yeah, that's one of the things you can do with a promise object. But what if a promise comes with a certain value? Let's say we want to know exactly which value is being we want to know on exactly which value it's been resolved. So how do we do it? Well, what we can do, we can add a value to resolve. Let's do this. Show in side view. So what will this value exactly mean? Well, this value is a value that will be used in the then clause or in the then method. So right now the value is 793. When let's say we want to keep it running indefinitely, and we can so now it runs indefinitely. So we've given resolve a value in the first parameter or the first argument. We can also use a value as a parameter. So let's do this and let's do comma value. Let's see what's happening. Once it's done, it says 814. 814. So that means that at tick 814, it's done, and that's the exact value that's given here. We can also do the same with reject. So let's say click on the button, and let's do here. We can use anything what we want right here, just like any normal function. So we can do value, or we can do reason. And this will come up later when we are going to do something more substantial. So right now we didn't test it, so let's refresh it and let's cancel it. And we can see now that we clicked on the button. So that's the value we've given at rejected. Now let's see what happens when we do here value and do console log value. No, well, it's undefined. So yeah, that's also a option. Or wait, maybe I can do return X, and if I do cancel, yeah, console log value. Let's cancel. Okay, that's not going to do anything. So I need to look into this one. Um, so yeah, finally doesn't actually have anything. Yeah, it doesn't have for an argument that it can use. Now, what you generally actually want to do is with reject is return an error object. So let's do new error, and use this, and of course console log error, that we know that it's an error and not just something we've decided. So, and here we can see that it returns the error. So clicked on this button, and HTML button element. Yeah. So now that we know something more about promises, let's go on with some new things, because this isn't the only thing you can do with promises. Let's say multiple promises .html. Save this and open multiple promises. So let's first remove everything here. And what we're going to do is make a div. And with an ID is race. So what we're going to do now is const racer is, let's say we have 5 racers. Show in preview. Now, what we're going to do is const create racer is, so a racer has several things. Let's say a const, we're going to keep it simple. We're not going to use an object to store things. That can be a bit overkill in this case, because we're going to do something with promises. So let's create an element first. So racer element is document create element, and it's a div. Next, we want to add this racer element to the race element. Const race is race element is document query selector race. So next, race element append child racer element. So for that I is 0, I smaller than racers, I plus plus, and create racer. So nothing happens. That's correct. So next we're going to let's see. Oh yeah, let's also do number and let's add I plus 1. So now let's do race element text content is racer number and this. That's weird. Why doesn't it race element append child racer? So why doesn't it? Hey, so what happens? Doesn't overwrite everything, does it? Let's So let's open this. Okay, this is really odd. So let's do this. Let's make it a bit bigger. Control Z. Let's do this. Okay, and this is odd. Oh, raise element. It has to be racer element. So now we have 5 racers. Okay. So next, what do we want to do? Let race start is 0. False. And what we want to do is div ID is a winner, because we want to display who the winner is. Const winner element is document query selector winner. Next, let's create a distance is 0. So next, what we want to do is return. We want to return a promise. So let's do new promise. And then do resolve reject. Let's not reject for now. So what we're now going to do is okay, distance plus is and math random times 10, but also math floor. We want to round down and minus 3. So math max 0, comma. So what does this actually do? So let me create a new file. So it will generate a number between 0 and 1, 1 excluded. So that means 0.99999, but 1 isn't included in it. Next, it multiplies it by 10. So it generates a number between 0 and 9 actually. So we now have a number between 0 and 9.999999. But since we round it down with math floor, it's only a number between 0 and 9, and it can only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It can only be a whole or an integer, a whole number or an integer. Whole numbers and integers are basically the same. So next, we subtract 3 from it, so that means minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe also. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that's correct. So what I've also established is it has to be the max number between 0 and the generated number. So if it's 0 and the generated number is lower than 0, then it picks the highest number out of the two. So math max with math max, it picks the highest number out of the numbers you provide. So if you say math max 1 2 5 6 2, it picks the 6 because 6 is the highest number in this series. And in this case, it picks either 0 or anything above 0. So 1 to 6. But that's not really important for this. What we want to do is, if distance um, greater than 1000, greater or equal to 1000, distance is 1000 first of all. How can we do this properly? Okay, I think I have a better idea. Math minus of minimum 1000. So this ensures that the maximum number is 1000, because if the distance value is 1001, it rounds down to 1000, or it caps off at 1000. So next we do distance plus this. So if, in this case, if 1000 is equal to 1000, because it can't be higher than 1000, it says resolve. And we also give back the number. So what we also want to do is uh, um, okay, wait. Const distance is distance element document create element span. And what we're also going to do is raise sir element, then child distance element. And we want to do distance element text content is 0. So every eraser starts at 0. And let's do distance element text content is distance. So right now it doesn't seem to do anything. That's because this function is only executed once. So what we do need to do is so what we can do, because it's only run once, we can move everything inside this promise. Next, we're going to do const run is else request animation frame what. And next we do run, and now we can see that every eraser is going to end up going to count up to 1000. So what can we do with this? Well, what we've done is once it reaches 1000, it resolves. Otherwise, it keeps on running. But we want to know who the winner is. So let's first start with if race start, because we don't want the race to start unless we actually start the race. Next, we wanna start the race after 1 second. So set timeout. Start race is through, comma 1000 milliseconds. Or race start is it? It's the race start. Okay. Show preview. All right. Yeah, that's okay. Let's move this code outside this. Yeah. Okay. So now we can see that each racer is going to race until 1000. So what we now want to do is determine who the winner is. Now we can do something like winner is false, blah blah blah. What we also can do is const racer list is, and it's going to be an array. Next, we're going to put each racer into this racer list, or well, let's call it racer promises. So because every racer is a promise, we can just do racer list push promise. So what can we do with this then? Well, what we can do with this is we can use this array and go through each promise and see if each promise is resolved. And there are some handy static methods for this. First of all, we can wait until all racers are finished. So promise dot all, and let's do this, and we can do then console log all racers finished. So let's see. Yeah, we can see now all racers finished. So instead of winner, we're going to do commentary and call this commentary. Let's do this. And let's also make a function for this. Const add commentary is commentary value. Let's do const comment element, and it's this document create element div, and comment element dot text content is commentary value. Finally, commentary element append child comment element. So now that we've created this, we can now say in this case once it's resolved, add commentary. Now let's do it properly first. So I believe you can just chain it. So let's do then add commentary number. No, racer number. So here racer has finished. Let's also add something here so that we know that the race has started. So let's do add commentary. The race has begun. And let's see. Yeah. So we can see that Racer 2 finished first, Racer 1 has finished, Racer 4 has finished, Racer 5 has finished, and Racer 3 has finished. And now we can, what we also can do now is add commentary. The race has ended. Let's save. Race has begun. And the race has ended. Okay, but we want to congratulate the winner, Racer 2, for their win. So what we can also do is promise dot, uh, and I believe it's race value. And what we can do, what race does is it waits for the first promise to resolve. Racer value has won the race. So let's see. Okay, that didn't work out the way I wanted. Oh yeah, I know what I did wrong. I needed to add the promises. Racer promises. And then. And this should work. Oh, we can see now Racer undefined has won the race. So why does this do it like this? So let's check out what the reason is. Is that it hmm. That's weird. I thought I resolved this. So let's see. And then let's see. Value. Let's do this first. I feel like something. Okay, okay, this worked. Why doesn't this work then? I think I did it correctly. Hmm. Racer undefined as one array. So why does it? So do this. Hmm. And this is pretty odd, honestly. So let's see what um console log number, and let's add console log number here. Yeah, okay, that's really odd. save it. Console log value. This is weird. It's, let's first remove this part because we don't need it. So, okay. Razor promise. Blah, blah, blah. Let's also do console log razor promises. S. Let's see what the output is. This is also a bit a part of programming. Sometimes you just don't know why things don't work. So first let's do const promise is, and then return promise. Console log promise. Why is the promise still pending? We've resolved the promise, right? Oh, wait, no. So, what happened here? So, what we've done is we've chained this promise with this then. Except, once you do that, it creates, I believe, another promise. So what we need to do actually is promise, save it, and then we get the right message here. So this is a thing you need to remember. If you, so okay, technically it doesn't return a, okay, let's check what this is. Console log. I believe it is a promise. Yeah, it is this, so then I believe I'll also catch, and finally I'll create a new promise. Don't quote me on that part. So let's see. Promise catch. What does catch do? Yeah, catch also creates a promise. Also log. So how can you resolve this? You can just do it like this. So promise then. But if you still want to do it in one line, then what you need to do, and then what we need to do here is return, and then at the end do return value class. If I'm correct. Yeah. So let's remove this. Add commentary, and what we now need to do is add commentary, the race, and it's included in this order. And that's this, and values. Going. I don't know if this is correct. I don't think it's correct. No, it isn't correct. So what all does is just return the values from each promise in the order of how they are defined. So this doesn't really work. So So what you can do, special thanks to racers. This is what you can do. So now it lists each racer. So what have we done so far? We've actually worked with promises. We've looked at how promises exactly work, um, like resolving promises, rejecting promises, and then finally executing something after a promise either has been rejected or resolved. Um, we've also um, done a race. And race means the first promise that has been uh, resolved. Um, and we have promise all. So all, yeah. So when all promises have resolved. Um, there are special circumstances like um, when you when a promise is rejected, but let's try it out. So let's do reject. What happens now? So there is no reject defined. So let's check what happens if we do catch value add commentary um, rejected and value. So what happens now if we do this? Okay, in this case, nothing seems to be executing. So let's try this one. Hmm. Oh, reject isn't defined, of course. That's pretty dumb from reject. Let's see what happens now. Rejected, 5, rejected, 5. So racer rejected race. So what happens? So once racer 1 has finished, yeah, it's true. It rejected the promise, which means that both all and race are rejected, and which is logical because if yeah. So in the case of promise all promises have to be resolved. If one promise isn't resolved, it gets rejected. And in the case of promise race, it also gets rejected. Um, okay, let me think. Oh yeah, because the moment racer 1 rejects the promise, it rejects the race. But let's see what happens um, uh, race ended because one failed. Oh no, no finishes because failed. Okay, so let's do something else. Let's finish racers is 0. So let's check something out. Promise. Uh, let's check. So I haven't worked a lot with promises, but I know some. Okay, let's check if this works. Promise any racer promises. Then a value. Um, so what any does is, okay, let's first replace this with resolve. And let's save this. And what we now do is check what any does. So let's do add commentary racer value as finished. Let's save it. So as you can see, we get the all right. Okay. I know. Um, I think if I do this, I know. All racers build. So let's check this out. And let's do reject. Because if I'm correct, this is yeah. So hmm. What if I do value? Yeah, not allow value. Yes. It's been a while since I worked with promise rejections. All yeah, as seen here, all promises were rejected in this case. So um, uh, Racer failed. So yeah. So what does any do? What any does is it it waits until a racer or a promise is resolved. If another promise is rejected, it tries to wait for the next promise and for the next promise until every promise is rejected or one promise is resolved. So that's what you can do with any. Raise is the first promise that either rejects or resolves is going to determine whether the entire race is going to be resolved or um, resolved or So yeah, if the first racer of if the first promise that's if the first promise gets resolved, the entire race gets resolved with that promise, and if that the first promise gets rejected, um, the entire race is getting rejected. If you get what I mean. So say racer one um, did finish, then it doesn't matter if the rest bailed or not. I can actually show it. Uh, let winner is false. Has winner. Has winner. And let's do then as winner is true. And next, what we're going to do is instead of reject, we do, and this is going to be if has winner, we're going to reject, otherwise else resolve number. So let's see. Okay. So we can see that none of the races have, okay, race ended because 2 bailed. So in this case, all gets rejected because one of the promises have been rejected. Which means for promise all promises have to be resolved, otherwise it just rejects the entire promise. In the case of race, the first to resolve or reject will resolve or reject the entire promise. And with any, the first promise that resolves will resolve this promise. Otherwise, if none of the promises resolve, then it will reject. So what can we say actually? We can say that this entire static method, and this entire static method, and this entire static method, these static methods actually are promises in themselves. Well, are there more static methods that resolve or reject promises? Well, certainly. Yeah, you have promise, solve, and promise reject. Why do these exist? Well, there is a good reason for them, and that's when you want to create a promise that always resolves or always rejects. Okay, so now we've handled promises. We can now do a lot more. Promises are really handy when you want to asynchronously load something in or do some calculations asynchronously. Say you have a big calculation that you want to split up in smaller sections and in smaller iterations, then you can basically just do that calculation and wait until that calculation resolves or rejects itself. But what we've seen is that we have then, and it seems okay. This seems okay. let's create a new file. Data.json. Let's create a new fetch.html. Now I'll have to be honest, I don't know if fetch will work within Visual Studio Code. I do hope so. Because Visual Studio Code runs a or at least the preview extension. So let's preview. I believe the live preview by Microsoft. I do believe it does create a new a separate web server. So in that case, fetch should work. So let's first check if fetch works. Let's do. So how does fetch work? Fetch is a way to get external data. Most often it's from a server, an API call, but you can also just fetch from a text file or a JSON file. So let's fill this JSON file with information. Name, Gary. And occupation, programmer. Save it because we don't need too much data. Let's do dot data.json. Let's console log fetch. Okay, so right off the bat we can see that fetch is a promise. So what can we do with it? We can do fetch dot then and then response console log response. So let's see, response. Okay, it seems useful maybe. Well, it has a readable stream. It has headers. Okay. What does the body say? Oh, wait, I need to read the contents of this. Um, well, what if we do JSON? Oh, wait, this is also a promise. So what do we do then? Now, well, we can do two things. We can do a then here, or what we can also do is return, and then we can do another then, because this is a promise. It will try to resolve the promise before it passes it on to the then promise. So okay, so because this is a arrow function, we don't need to use the return keyword. We can just use this. So this also functions as a return. So let's const arrow function is, and then let's do 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 4 5, and do console log arrow function, and you can see that this is the return value. Okay, but let's go back to this. So let's do enter to make it a bit more readable. Now let's do then, and then name this JSON. And now let's do console log JSON. Okay, so now we finally have the JSON content. We finally have what the data. We have the name and we have the occupation as a object. Yeah, that's pretty swell, but it feels a bit like well, it feels like nesting hell. We nest a then in a then before we get our results. Can we do this easier? Maybe. Can we do it a bit more beautiful? Well, of course. So let's start off with function get data, and let's move this in the function. Okay, so you might wonder, well, this doesn't really do anything new, right? It's exactly the same as what we did before, except one extra step. Well, of course, sure, until we use async. So if we do get data and then do console log get data, we can now see that the asynchronous function is now also a promise. So how did we solve this? Actually, it doesn't seem solved, right? Well, let's just add something more. First we do const response and then fetch. Let's comment this out. Next, what we now can do is return. Oh, no, wait. So what does this do? If we do now, if we now do console log response, we still get a promise, and promise is pending. Well, that's not ideal. Well, we need to wait for this promise to resolve, so we can use the keyword await. Await waits until a promise is resolved before it continues. Let's look here. Console log fetching data, console log done fetching data. So as you now can see, it first fetches data, waits until this is done. If we remove this, it still works, but yeah, it doesn't do anything with the response. So let's okay, yeah, if I do this and do this, then it doesn't error, but you know what I think. Let's comment this out as well. So now you can see oh yeah, first let's also run get data. So now we have this. So first it executes fetch data, then after it's done fetching, it says that it's done fetching. If we don't do this, then it well, it still does the same order, but it runs this before this is finished loading. So now the const promise is, and let's now console log, and we can now see that not promise, response, and then we can now see the response data. So what can we do now? What we now can do is return await response JSON. Okay. So what to do now? We can now do then JSON console log JSON, and we get exactly the same. So now we've reduced the amounts of thens to just one then. And again, and it can get crazier. What you can do now is new file, more data, and you can fetch more data after you fetch the previous data. So what if you, for example, had a list of cards and then you had a list of decks? But let's do that a bit later. First, let's go over what we've done so far. We've handled promises. We handled multiple promises. We now have handled asynchronous functions. And I think that's going to be it when it comes to asynchronous functions. There's also another thing that I can teach you, and that's generator functions, but generator functions are a bit harder. So let's continue with this. So the async keyword defines sets a function as an asynchronous function and waits until a promise is resolved or rejected. So what happens when a promise gets rejected? Well, let's see. Let's try data bar. Data bar doesn't exist. So how do we resolve this? How do we resolve this this issue? Well, what we can do is then, oh no, not then. We can, okay, before we do that, before we're going to resolve this, we're going to do something else. Try catch. So have you might have noticed that promises use the keyword use a method called a catch. So where does catch come from? Well, it comes from the try catch block. So log e. So let's say we have a const letter is a, const letter is b, console log letter. Letter 1, letter 2, letter 2. So let's now say show preview, and let's do const letter 2 is C. Okay, that doesn't throw an error. Let's just manually throw an error. New error. Sorry. And then console log letter 2, letter 1. So what happens here? So we first made shown letter 1 and 2, and we want to show letter 2 and 1. But here we throw an error. The reason why I threw an error here is because let's pretend that here something happens that causes this entire function to throw an exception, an error. An exception is something that happens when something goes wrong. And an exception then gets thrown, and thrown means the function stops, or the code stops to say, hey, something went wrong with your code. You have to resolve this before you deploy it, or something. We can't continue this function unless the exception has been resolved, which is handy for some situations. Say you try to add a number, add two numbers to each other, but for some reason you can't add these numbers together. But what if you don't want the entire program to stop? Like say you have const letters is nothing, letters is nothing, and letters is letter 1 plus letter 2, and console log letters. All right, yeah, letter 1, letter 2 weren't defined. So let's do this. Let's see. So yeah, as you can see, letter A, B. Okay, let's put them back there, and let's do this. Home, and let's do this. So what we want is that we want to at least have console log letters. Without this try catch block, let's say, well, this part will never get executed. With the try catch block, if this block breaks somewhere, it still will show this. So that's what a try catch block does. Catch, and what catch does, it catches any error it catches. In this case, the error is just an error message saying sorry. So let's go back to fetch, I believe. So let's go back here and let's try to resolve this error. So what we want to do is, if it can't fetch the data, we just want to throw null. So what we're going to do is try catch e console log e, so that we know what the error is, and return null. Um, oh, right. Let's response, and then not const response. And what's more, uncaught unexpected token. Okay, let's do this. Let's do const response again. And okay, unexpected token, blah blah blah. It's not a valid JSON. Okay, so what happens is this still gets resolved because the 404 page still gets fetched. But it does mean that the 404 page, which isn't a JSON file string, will error here. So what will happen now is, because this throws an exception, it goes to the catch block, and now this value becomes null, or it can be an empty object. So that's how you can resolve a rejection. So let's now go to generate functions, I guess. And to be honest, generated functions are the type of functions I have the least experience with. Generated functions are kind of like asynchronous functions. Not really. Let's first create a generated function. Generator, and let's do a for loop. For that I is 0, I smaller than 3, I plus is 1. You can also use plus plus, but so let's do something here, and then return true. So how does do generator function work? Let's do console log generator, and let's open the preview here. So as you can see, the generator function creates a generator object. So const object is generator. Well, let's call this generator function to make it clearer, and then do generator. So how do you exactly use it? Well, there's a keyword called yield. I yield, and yield, what it does is it allows you to yeah, yield the control back to the how do you say it correctly? Yield is a and that's how you know I haven't worked with generator functions at all, but I do know what how it works. So let's just do yield I. So let's now do console log generator next. So now what we have is a value, and done is false. Let's do it again. Yeah, we now have a value 1, and done is false. Next is 2, and done and false. It's false. But next has value true, and done is true. We can also do a done. Where's the E? Where's the E? Where's the what the? Maybe I was too fast. Yeah. Okay. So what it does is the generator function can pause itself whenever it yields, which means that you can execute a bit of code, then yield it back to the main process, and then continue the generator function in the next iteration, and until it's either done or you decide to say, screw this generator function, I don't need you anymore, let's just forget about it. But generally you do want to iterate until it's done. So let's say while generator next. Okay, so no, let's do something else. So let's let result do result is generator next console log result value while result done. Oh crap, that's not good. That's not good. Uh-oh, that's not good. Oh crap. Console log next. Wait, what did I do? What did I do? Oh no, oh no. R. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, I think I've broken it a bit. I've broken the server. Okay, live preview, stop server. Okay, show preview again, and now it reruns the. Oh, okay, that's. Okay, what did I do? Okay, so let's not do do that. But I hope you get the point. Uh, you can just yield to the yeah. So that's basically how a generator function works. There are many reasons why you want to use a generator function. For example, Redux Sagas uses generator functions in about the same way. Um, so yeah, that's basically what generator functions do. Um, okay, so um, what can we do now? Um, yeah, I think what I want to do is I think I'm going to end the stream. It's pretty late for me. I've been uh, hold, postponing the stream because we had visitors and um, I didn't expect this stream to go for this long. So, what have we actually learned? Well, um, we've learned how to use promises to um, basically um, uh, well, we've learned how to use promises. Promises can be rejected or resolved, and they are used to asynchronously, or they can be used to asynchronously perform certain actions. We also learned how to use asynchronous functions, and we know how to use fetch. There are other things that use promises and asynchronous functions. Those are the things you discover when you decide to, um, well, when you decide to learn more about JavaScript. So, as I said, next time I am going to do something else. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next time. I might just make it a general programming stream where I'll make something and you can ask questions. I might even try to make a game in JavaScript. In fact, there is a game I do want to make in JavaScript. It's not a simple task. Um, in fact, it's going to be a big task, and it's going to be a card game. Um, it's not going to be a famous card game, I think. Um, but it's a card game nevertheless. And if I don't do that, I might just do TypeScript. But TypeScript is going to be a bit more difficult to explain because you need to install Node.js and some other packages and uh, well, npm is an important part of it, and I don't want to do that just yet. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit this. So first, let's first okay, let's do this later. Um, I am going to share my GitHub server, GitHub repository, um, but okay. So let's go to the ending screen because it's maybe a bit more easier. So um, all my project will be put on my GitHub repository, um, so that you can look at it and work with it however you want. It will also include other projects I've made for this stream, or for other during other streams, or maybe even outside streams, um, that you can use for your own projects. Um, I don't know if I'm going to stream tomorrow. If I'm going to stream tomorrow, it's probably going to be a game. Uh, so let's see, who can we raid? Um, hmm, there is a Zepkis streamer. There are a few just chatting streamers. Okay, let's just stream someone that I know. I'm going to raid Maki. Maki is currently playing Zapekist. He is also a Zapekist builder. I don't know what Maki is doing. Maybe building a track. I don't know. Um, so be kind. Oh, he's playing something else even. Why does it say Zapekist? Oh, Peglin. Peglin is also a good game. So, yeah. Anyways, see you guys another time, and hopefully see you again soon.